Good morning to everybody. Good morning to all that were at the panel before and were with me as well. Welcome to this keynote session with questions and answers of the Europe in Digital Age conference organized by Forum Europe. First of all, I will give the floor to Ambassador Nuno Brito from the permanent representation of Portugal to the European Union. Portugal has taken the presidency of the European Council this semester. Portuguese presidency has always demonstrated to be of crucial importance for the EU. We are sure that this time it will also deliver. Of course, the digitalization is among their main priorities. He cannot join us online, but he has sent us a recorded intervention. Let us hear the words of the ambassadors. Just prior to finish my first speak, I remind you that you can send your questions or your remarks about the intervention of these participants that we have today. And I'll hand over the floor to this record. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dear Mr. Garcia del Blanco, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Forum Europe for inviting me to be with you today. I'm glad to take this opportunity to share the Portuguese presidency's views on Europe's digital future and strategic autonomy. I will start by addressing this concept of strategic autonomy and clarify what it means to us. In our view, it should be interpreted as open strategic autonomy. Indeed, one of the three main priorities of our presidency is strengthening the strategic autonomy of a Europe that is open to the world. We must promote European production in key sectors, especially those related to research, development, and innovation, and focus particularly on small and medium-sized enterprises as well as on startups. And we know that we need to take some strategic decisions together on industrial policy, competition policy, and trade. These decisions, and indeed the entire debate about Europe's strategic autonomy, should not be guided by a protectionist vision. On the contrary, they should be based on fostering European competitiveness, which will then lead to a greater autonomy. The goal should be to tailor competition, trade, and digital policies to the diversities of Europe's economic landscape. We must foster the creation of networks of cooperation on a European scale between large companies and SMEs, together with research centers and universities. This is how we unlock the full potential of an open and deeper single market with high social, safety, and environmental standards. In this context, during the Portuguese presidency, we want to contribute to greater European digital autonomy. So today, for the purposes of this conference, I would like to focus on the digital pillar of the priorities of the Portuguese presidency. Indeed, this pillar is embedded in our motto, time to deliver, a fair, green and digital recovery. The Portuguese presidency follows three guiding principles on the digital pillar. Firstly, we believe that the digital transition is a strong driver of sustainable economic recovery. Together with the green transition, this is a unique opportunity to strengthen the single market. Secondly, we believe we must enhance the digital empowerment of citizens and businesses, supported by a trustworthy, ethical and neutral digital environment. And thirdly, we want to uphold digital democracy, which must be reinforced to ensure Europe's global leading role. We are working hard to reach these objectives by focusing our attention on the negotiations of very timely and relevant legislative files. I would like to highlight some of them. First and foremost, the Digital Services Package, that is, the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act. This is the first horizontal and comprehensive legislation to regulate modern-day digital platforms. To this end, the European Union aims to foster the competitiveness of the digital single market by promoting a level playing field for all companies, especially SMEs and startups. We believe these two pieces of legislation deserve top priority as they will become regulatory models. The Digital Markets Act, for instance, is at the cutting edge of how competition policy can evolve alongside the challenges of the digital world. Having said that, the importance of data cannot be overstated. After all, the world is built on data. For this reason, the Portuguese Presidency will concentrate on the Data Governance Act, an essentially first step towards the completion of a single market for data based on the free flow of data. We contribute to Europe's autonomy by developing forward-looking and smart regulation. There is broad support for promoting the flow of data in compliance with the European Union's international commitments. The respect for European Union values and principles, including privacy, security, and trust, are essential. The idea is to create bridges, not walls. And finally, I will briefly touch upon the artificial intelligence framework, which will be launched in the coming months. It is crucial to foster global dialogue and partnerships on artificial intelligence so we can avoid fragmentation, which ultimately harms our economies. Portugal fully supports the European Union's drive towards becoming a global leader in the digital and data domain. Together, we are building not only a solid regulatory infrastructure, but also a high degree of trust among key stakeholders in the data sharing economy. Beyond the legislative agenda, the Presidency will devote special attention to the topic of international connectivity. It is well known that Europe's digital autonomy and global competitiveness depend on strong internal and external connectivity. Leveraging both dimensions is a prerequisite for the European Union to become the most attractive, most secure, and most dynamic data agile economy in the world. The European Union has the potential to become a world-class data hub. We have one of the best legislative frameworks and a solid infrastructure. In this regard, we foresee some concrete steps to promote Europe's potential to become a global data manager and digital services provider. These are namely the development of a European data gateway platform strategy that turns international connectivity into one of the main work streams in the European digital strategy. It will call for a renewed focus on strengthening Europe's international connectivity through submarine cables. We must ensure that international cables linking member states and other parts of the world have the speed and the capacity to keep up with exponential data flows and international trade volumes in digital services. It is crucial that Europe develops a holistic, future-ready data infrastructure that can enable the European Union to harness the benefits of the data economy. We are confident that all member states will benefit from this strategy. Connecting the European Union to the rest of the world will strengthen the European Union's global reach. So far, submarine cable infrastructures have been heavily concentrated in the Northern Hemisphere. To build our European digital leadership, we must ensure new, secure, and resilient submarine cable routes linking the European Union to countries in the Southern Hemisphere. European Union outermost regions and territories could act as strategic relay points, thereby developing local economies. And as a result, we would be able to offer European Union digital services on a global scale and generate mutually beneficial developments in our digital ecosystems. Therefore, we propose the development of 3 international platforms to secure Europe's connectivity: the EU Atlantic, EU Mediterranean, and EU North Sea platforms. Portugal intends to contribute to the EU Atlantic Data Gateway platform with the inauguration on June 2nd of the Ella Link submarine cable. The cable is the first direct link from Europe through Sines in Portugal to South America through Fortaleza in Brazil. The bottom line is Europe cannot become an island in the digital ocean. The initiative by President von der Leyen on a new transatlantic agenda for global change is a good example of what we want to achieve with our global partners. The idea of setting up a joint EU-US tech agenda could allow for a deeper rapprochement on digital governance, which is both timely and welcome. In short, international connectivity is all about our will and capacity to build bridges with other regions and reap the benefits of digital trade while protecting our values and strengthening our single market. I will finish with what is perhaps the core of our mission: to contribute towards the setting up of European fundamental rights for the digital world. The Portuguese presidency has the ambition to lay down the basis for a European model of digital transformation based on a strong human dimension and democratic values, citizens' rights and freedoms, placing the European Union at the global forefront of a new, safer, more reliable and competitive digital world. This will be enshrined in a document entitled Lisbon Declaration, Digital Democracy with a Purpose. To conclude, in the next 6 months, we will work hard, hand in hand with the European Commission, to move the European digital agenda forward, an area that is both fundamental for our economies and a core concern for our citizens. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Ambassador. Let me say that I'm really looking forward this Portuguese presidency because it's Europeanism and its social vision as well in a general approach of view. I'd like to pass over the floor to our next speaker. Now is the turn of the European Commission. Jean-Éric Paquet, the Director General of the DG on Research and Innovation of the European Commission. He's going to give us his vision about the digital European environment. And we are looking forward as well to listen to him. Thank you, Mr. Paquet, and the floor is yours.
Ambassador Blanco, thank you very much, and thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to share a few considerations on Europe's digital priority, connected, of course, to the green transformation as well. And both the digital and green transformation are Europe's agenda for growth. As the ambassador just said, our agenda to recover and have more resilient societies and economies. But of course, also they are key elements to further our strategic autonomy. What I want to do briefly is indeed to say how European science, European research and innovation in digital, but also across many other sectors, are contributing alongside legislation, the Digital Service Act or the Digital Market Act and the Data Governance Act, which the ambassador mentioned, I think have been covered in other sessions, so I'm not going to come back to them. They are, of course, a key element of Europe's response and of Europe's ambition to become a digital society and economy which competes with our global partners and competitors. But in addition to this legislation, or next to this legislation, there's of course also need for industrial investment, technological investments, underpinned by science, research and innovation. And this is happening in a world which has profoundly changed already with this digital revolution, forms of collaboration, new discovery. All this is really very much challenging Europe's research and innovation. The fact also that we are increasingly customer-centric in the digital world is an interesting development, including because very often sustainable solutions are also requested. But then also what you observe in markets, and research and innovation needs to be aware of that, is increasing concentration, of course, in the US and China particularly. And this comes then also in Europe with probably a lagging investment. And we are well aware of a number of investment gaps which exist in quantum, in AI, in the digital investments more generally. There is, of course, also more which can be done in Europe on 5G. The deployment of 5G needs to be accelerated. And the Commission, alongside member states, is, of course, ramping up its efforts on that. If sometimes we are describing Europe in the digital challenge as being a second-tier player, I think this is deeply changing with, of course, the legislation, which drives also a global agenda. I think this is the game changer. But at the same time, work happening at member states and at EU level, with in particular the big focus which the European Council, the European Parliament, on the basis of the Commission proposal, have put on digital in the MFF, I think are game changers as well. And what I want to try to briefly now sketch out is why I believe that we are now equipping ourselves and already making headway to become a major player, in particular as we now move to the next wave or the next phase of digital innovation, which is going to be connected much more, as we all know, to the digital world, but particularly the deep tech revolution, where science and technological development in synthetic biology, in health, also linked to AI, I think will connect better Europe's engineering strengths, Europe's science strengths. Maybe just here to underline that Europe's science is, alongside others, but is the best in the world. So we will connect our deep assets with the digital developments which are happening. And I think that in itself certainly also allows to look positively at the future. I think the main point of this short presentation, I think, is to underline that we need much more cooperation, the ambassador noted it as well, to achieve the critical mass at EU level to be relevant to deal with our own transformation, green and digital, to be relevant at global level. And this is where industrial alliances, but also the work of Commissioner Maria Gabriel in Horizon Europe and in the European research area are going to be absolutely critical. And maybe one area to illustrate it before I go into a short presentation on where we are on the European research area and Horizon Europe is COVID-19. In the European response to COVID-19, which has been multifaceted and extremely impactful at national and collectively at EU level, research and innovation has played, of course, a big part. And in particular, we created at the outset, back in April, together with European partners, a COVID-19 platform where data on the virus has been shared widely in Europe and, of course, also internationally. And that's a point from Ambassador Nuno de Brito, which I would like to underline as well, which is that, yes, we are looking for strategic autonomy, but in research and innovation and more generally, we want to also remain open to the world. And this platform is also one which has allowed international collaboration. Just to give you a sense, we have on this platform more than 130,000 publications on coronavirus. We have nearly 50,000 viral sequences and more than 170,000 raw viral sequence reads. So the science, world science, is on that portal, and this open science data sharing effort has made has allowed researchers across the world and in Europe to be faster than ever in providing responses to COVID-19 on tests, on therapies, and of course on vaccines. And here also on vaccines, even if it is not completely linked to digital, I think I would also like to underline for all our audience that on vaccines, this is also a European success story, a science success story as well, because the BioNTech vaccine, I mean, sometimes labeled as Pfizer vaccine, but the science behind the vaccine is 100% European. The founder of BioNTech, Ugur Sahin, and I think this is now known, has been working in the European research ecosystem for 20 years with his messenger RNA breakthroughs. And this was funded across these 20 years, also with European programs, notably the European Research Council. And on top of that, BioNTech, but also CureVac, another European biotech German company, were both supported by the European Investment Bank, guaranteed by European programs. And this is, I think, an interesting story on strategic autonomy. Some of you might remember that in January, February, there were attempts in the US to lure CureVac over to the US, but then investments from the EIB, but of course investments also from the German government, allowed the company to stay in Europe. The vaccine is a little bit beyond and after the BioNTech one, but hopefully will come on stream as well in the coming weeks and months. So there are very, very here obvious examples where Europe's science is cutting edge and allows indeed real progress to be made, and the digital dimension of Europe's COVID-19 response also on tracking the epidemic, I think is speaking for itself. Now, in terms of where we are now heading in research and innovation, in particular for partnerships, what I would like to underline here is that in the Commission, but in fact with member states, the ambition is to move a step further beyond what we have successfully done in past programs. Horizon 2020 is now running to its end. There will still be implementation, but running to its end, is to increase even further our cooperation. The biggest member states in quantum, in AI, will not be able to make a difference on their own. And I still remember vividly a minister of a very big member state saying that at the session when Horizon Europe was agreed, that even if the research system nationally was extremely well funded, extremely powerful, in reality, what they needed is what was done in other member states. And what was not happening in other member states was a real challenge for that member state as well. So a very strong call across all 27 member states to align much better research and investment in innovation and technology so that we have this EU critical mass. EU instruments, of course, need to be part of that, together with legislation. This is where on the Recovery and Resilience Facility, 20%, as you know, is dedicated to digital investments. But then across the Recovery and Resilience Facility, work is happening at member state level to finalize the work on the investment plans. All areas will most certainly also have an important, possibly innovation, but certainly a digital window as well. And these investments are well identified in all member states as needing to be well connected to the rest of the MFF. And here, I must say, the European Parliament, with the Council and the Commission, have made particular efforts to ensure that the various components in Europe's budget linked to the Recovery and Resilience Facility, but not always, but linked to it, will work in sync. So the Digital Europe program, the Space program, InvestEU, the Connecting Europe facility, will all be connected closely with the investments done in Horizon Europe, so that the outcome of Europe's research and innovation can then also be translated in strategic industrial investments, and that solutions can be deployed. That is the case across all areas which are the priorities set by the co-legislator. E-health will, of course, be particularly important, also linked to the Recovery and Resilience Facility. We have a very big ambition on culture, on civil security for society. Mr. Richter will come in certainly on that in a moment, where Europe's cybersecurity industrial capacities will much be supported by research and innovation investment, and connected then to the investments led by cybersecurity actors. And this, of course, in line with our standards and values. The big component, obviously, in Horizon Europe is the cluster on digital industry and space, where many partnerships are intended. The high-performance computer partnership is being discussed in Council. There'll be one on photonics, key digital technologies, smart networks and services. There's also a big ambition on AI, data, and robotics. And of course, the work already started in Horizon 2020 on quantum continues. This connects then to deep digital investments also in energy or mobility, supporting the green transformation. Also, of course, in the agricultural, precision agriculture revolution. So we want to ensure that this is connected. Maybe as a last point, before I close, I would also want to briefly highlight the European Innovation Council, which is a creation of Horizon Europe, but which has been piloted already jointly by my friend Roberto Viola and DG Connect colleagues and ourselves over the last year and a half. So under the leadership of Maria Gabriel. And the European Innovation Council is very much focusing on this deep tech revolution, which I mentioned at the outset. This is where the European Innovation Council wants to make a difference, allowing startups, spin-offs, SMEs in the science innovation. So as I said, synthetic biology, engineering linked to mobility or construction, but also e-health applications, to come forward. And what they need is patient capital and investment to allow them, in many cases, to complete their research journey, bring their products to the market. And the EIC, as a rather remarkable feature, also provides equity. The first deals were signed a few weeks ago, so that these companies can not only get a grant to complete their research, but also with that equity become then more relevant, and hopefully can then broaden financing rounds with other partners. The uptake is amazing. We were overwhelmed with great ideas, great innovation came already forward, and I very much expect that the EIC, complementing what is very well done at national level, can also make a big impact on bringing Europe as a key player in the next phase of the global digital revolution, where I said deep tech, I think, will have a very central role. AI being, of course, a particularly important dimension also for the European Innovation Council. I think I was probably already a bit beyond my time slot, Ivana, and I apologize for that. But the message is we are really working hand in hand with member states to get this critical mass, and I'm very confident that we will over this cycle make a real difference. Thanks.
Thanks to you, Mr. Packet. It sounds so challenging and fascinating at the same time. And thank you for drawing as the landscape of priorities we have ahead in Europe. It was worth listening to you. It doesn't matter the time. Now I will introduce to Mr. Markus Richter. He's State Secretary and Federal Government Commissioner for Information Technology of the German Federal Ministry of Interior, Building and Community. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Richter, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ivan. It's great to have the opportunity to speak to you and have this exchange, because I think it's a very important decision we are facing right now. The question is, for what purpose do we do and why are we working on digital sovereignty? Well, we just heard that there will be this Portuguese declaration, which also describes what digital sovereignty can mean for economy especially. But also we had in the last year a declaration called the Berlin Declaration. We just finalized it in our presidency of the German presidency. And of course, these two declarations are linked to each other. Both the one we did, more focused on public administration, and the one which we see during the Portuguese presidency, which is more on the focus on economy. They both address values. And I think it's easy to say, okay, we are sharing common values. But in the end, we see every day what it means in a digital world to really enforce these values. There are so many examples just recently, but also, other states, other regions of the world are using the internet for their own purpose, for instance, for gaining taxpayers or looking at the social behavior, for instance. And there are, of course, hyperscalers, big companies. They have their own purpose to do digitization and to support there. I think for us, it's mostly important right now to define what is the European way of doing digitization. We are all facing now this situation of Corona, the pandemic, and I think now we see also much clearer that there's a high pressure on digitization because people are waiting for digital solutions, especially in situations where isolation is a part of every life, and still we want to participate in society. And therefore, digitization is a way of getting rid of the distances, and to come over these isolations. And therefore, there's a high pressure on doing digitization, not only in the economy, but also in the public administration. And therefore, we will be successful if we clearly describe for what purpose we are doing this. We want to protect the free space internet. We want to help people by using these techniques. And therefore, we have to ensure that data protection is there, that IT security is there, and that we can act in a digital sovereign way. And digital sovereignty not only means that the institutions within Europe and within the member states can be digital sovereign, but the people have to be digital sovereign. They need to know how to use these instruments, what it means, where my personal data is stored, and how can I act and use information I get through the internet. And therefore, we are not only talking of techniques and digital or technical solutions, but also of skills. Therefore, it's important to know what is our aim, what is our approach. I'm glad that we have, with these two declarations, the Berlin Declaration and the Portuguese Declaration, which will come up, a clear vision. And I'm very happy that in many regions within the world, there are countries coming to us, to Europe, and asking, oh, how did you do this? 27 countries agreed on these common values of doing digitization. What can we learn? And how can we have an exchange? Because I think from Europe, with the strong picture we are there describing, we can also be a lighthouse within the world and have an exchange and learn every day how to improve our system. So this is the one aspect. The other one is, of course, technical solutions. I'm talking about sovereignty, not autonomy or autarky, things like this. I think the future lies in the sovereignty. Sovereignty means that we have options and that we create options, so that I've got always two possible solutions which I can choose. And if one of the solutions doesn't fit anymore to my needs, that I'm then in the possibility to migrate my data and my application to another stack, for instance. I think there are great steps forwards right now. I think that, for instance, Gaia X, this cloud, European cloud environment, is coming up very well. I'm happy that more and more companies want to contribute and bring in their data. I think it's also good if we as public administration also participate in these solutions. I'm also happy that it was possible to achieve a political agreement on a cybersecurity agency, a center in Europe, because I think when we talk about these different solutions, we always have to have in mind to protect these environments. And therefore, we have to bring in the science with the practical sides. And of course, many member states, like we do in Germany, have their own competence centers. I think we have to link these different centers with each other, and therefore I'm happy that there was a political agreement on creating such a European competence center. And I think we will improve the communication in this field through this as well. So we have not only to create options, we really have to work on this. And therefore, I'm talking about architectural guidelines, for instance. We have to describe what are the architectures we want to see if we use solutions. Only by doing so, we can create pressure on the market. By doing so, we can be sure to be able to migrate between different solutions. And of course, there are some fields, especially in the public administration, where we also need kind of autarky, so where we do the solutions by our own. But these are use cases. They are not that often. The most use cases we are facing are more in the field of sovereignty, and therefore these architectural guidelines are important. And I'm happy that we are linked between the CIOs of the different member states to discuss these issues, and also, of course, on the European level with the legislation where these guidelines are enforced. We are working there closely together. I think we have to improve our communication in this field a little bit more. And it's now the right time, because we are facing new technologies which can make things happening. And therefore, it's now the right time to describe what we need. We do this, of course, in Germany as well. We just have, for instance, a Data Security Act on the way, and an IT Security Act, where we had a big discussion about 5G and if it's possible, if we should forbid certain vendors. Our approach is a different one. We describe what we need, and it's not just the point to say what we don't want. We have to work on creating these additional options. And we are working on improving the skills, for instance, of the people working in the public administration. Therefore, we create right now a digital academy to improve these digital skills we need so urgently to being able to decide which options are the right solutions for our work. So let me conclude by this and saying really thank you for the close cooperation, especially with Portugal right now, with the new presidency there, and the communication on the European level and the things which are on the way on this level. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Mr. Richter. It was quite interesting, and apparently we don't have questions from audience, so therefore we are running short of time a bit. We'll leave this panel here, but first of all, I'd like to thanks again for participating in this debate to our two participants, and of course to the ambassador of the Portuguese presidency. Next panel, and we'll see each other again in the next panel. Next panel is going to be the session of diversifying ecosystems, leadership roundtable. Stay tuned on the main stage. Thank you very much, and good morning.
Thank you.